We're back, Barbara Walters, Harry Reasoner, Howard K. Smith, and we have a very important return, 2 returns in. Harry, you begin.
In Wisconsin, which has taken a long time, but now ABC News projects that in Wisconsin, Jimmy Carter will win that state's 11 electoral votes by a close margin. The popular vote in Wisconsin, with 90% of the precincts in, Carter holds a 50 to 48% lead. With those 11 electoral votes, I think Barbara has an important announcement.
Yes, I do. In the state of Hawaii, with 4 electoral votes, those votes have gone to Carter, and that does it. ABC now projects Carter is the winner with 272 electoral votes. We had wondered which one of us was going to make this announcement. It was the one who got the last projection, and it's the 4 Hawaii votes that, on our count, has put Carter over the top. By our projection, James Earl Carter, the next president of the United States.
You know, that Hawaii vote is not surprising.
That is Miss Lillian, the 78-year-old mother of the next president, listening probably to so many well wishes, people applauding her. She has said that she will continue to live in Plains. She said earlier tonight, I'm just a hick, but she's a hick with a son who's going to be president of the United States. There she is. You can't keep Miss Lillian down for too long, though. Vote Carter 272, Ford 160, and now we'll go from Miss Lillian to Sam Donaldson in Atlanta. Sam?
Well, Barbara, I can tell you that upstairs they must be very happy and must be very relieved. There was some nervousness tonight, but I don't think on the part of the candidate or perhaps even on the part of some of his key staff members. I really believe Jimmy Carter has thought from the very beginning that he was going to be the next president of the United States. There have been moments during the primaries when he suffered setbacks. There have been things that he has done to himself. I think he would agree in words that he's used or situations he's gotten himself into that have caused him setbacks. But all along you just had the idea that here was a man who had a purpose and had a goal and began by pulling himself up by his own bootstraps in this matter, and with the help of a few close aides mapped out a strategy and stuck to it and just kept going, and now has apparently reached his goal. Last week, I thought he was nervous in the middle of the week. There were some days that went badly, Wednesday and Thursday in New York, things that were done to his campaign that he really had no control over, but they set a tone that was injurious to the final stretch drive. And yet on Friday, it was as if the sun just sort of broke through. They'd lucked over their numbers. Pat Caddell's polls were beginning to show that they had bottomed out in the erosion that had been taking place. And he seemed to be confident from that moment on, even more so than usual, that he was going to come to this moment.
Sam, I once asked Jimmy Carter, I said, a new president has 9 months of honeymoon before he gets into trouble with Congress. Are you prepared to use those 9 months? And he said, I absolutely am. What's he going to do now? What's he going to do tomorrow? Will he start hunting for a cabinet or what?
Well, Howard, he's going to be off and running. I'm sure he'll take a little rest, a day or two, but once on the stump in the last few days, he said rather exuberantly that the moment he became president-elect, within 2 or 3 days, he would ask the leadership of Congress, the Democratic leaders, to come down to Plains, or at least meet with him somewhere, and start mapping out a program. He's already said that he would present a proposal for welfare reform very quickly, and that before long he would have proposals for other things.
Well, we want to go to Miss Lillian again now, Sam. We understand she's very near you there in Plains.
Jimmy Carter, a woman who in her 70s became a Peace Corps worker, and with 78 years young, a very happy woman tonight. She's been wearing that T-shirt, obviously, under her coat almost all of the evening. It says Jimmy Carter in 76. Well, from this jubilant mood of Miss Lillian, we go to Washington to a very different mood. Tom Jowell reporting on the White House right now.
Yes, Barbara, unless someone wakes up the president, he has told his aides he thinks he's going to win, and he's gone to bed and apparently gone to sleep. He did that on the basis of the situation of about 15-20 minutes ago when UPI had indeed called the election for Jimmy Carter, but none of the major television networks had yet called it. And he told his aides to go out and tell the reporters that he still thinks he's going to win. And he went to bed on the basis of the election being undecided, as his press secretary put it. He is sending word over to his supporters in a nearby hotel, supporters that have been gathered by the thousands all night waiting for a victory celebration, to tell them that they can go home. And he is not planning on going over there and issuing a concession statement tonight. Instead, we're told that he has retired. But I might add a small footnote to that. We've had a lot of developments here in the last 5 minutes or so, and it's entirely possible that Mr. Ford may have been lingering just a bit longer, or some of his aides may feel now that the news merits waking him and giving him the late-breaking developments as far as the electoral vote counts. So we may have some type of statement from him tonight, but so many races are so close, and because the White House wants to contest at least a recheck of that return in New York State, I would guess at this point that he wants to have more returns and a more definitive answer to the election, probably coming in the morning after he's had a good night's sleep. Okay, back to New York now.
We want to go to Ms. Lillian again. She's talking in Plains, Georgia. Can we pick her up?
I was invited to come to Atlanta tonight, and I wouldn't have gone for anything, because you're my folks, and you've been with me all the time, and I'm sticking with, and who's going to stay till Jimmy comes home? Thank you. I tell you, I don't think I'll be at the White House much, but in case I am and y'all come, I'll know who you are. My granddaughter, we walk in, we walk in, we walk in, we walk in.
Not that it matters any longer, but we have a projection of a victory in an individual state. ABC News projects that Carter will win by a close margin in Illinois. So that, if he already has the victory, that seals it. I beg your pardon. I've made a mistake. It was Ford whom we projected as the victor in Illinois, not Carter.
We should probably take the time now to look at how Jimmy Carter put together his so far 272 projected electoral votes on the little scorecard that we've been keeping all night. His biggest victory was in New York, 41 votes, and that's, of course, the state that is possibly going to be contested by the Republicans. There's been a court order issued to impound voting machines in New York City because of suspicions that there may be something wrong with them. He also took Pennsylvania with 27 votes.
In a way, that's remarkable, Harry, because the worst demonstration against Jimmy Carter was at Scranton, Pennsylvania, on the subject of abortion. So he was worried about Pennsylvania.
Well, he took Texas with 26 votes. That took a long time to come through, but in the final way that the popular vote is going there, he's winning by a strong 7% in Texas. He took Florida.
And Florida was predicted that it would go for Jimmy Carter, but it was one of those states that could have gone to Ford. And Ford sure would have wanted to have that, but as we see, it did indeed go to Carter.
As did Massachusetts.
And Massachusetts, of course, was expected to go to Jimmy Carter. That would have been amazing if it hadn't. Massachusetts, the only state that went to George McGovern, a strong Democratic state, and Massachusetts early on went for Carter.
North Carolina was considered all the time leaning to Carter, but could have gone the other way, but Carter pulled it out by a close margin.
And that marked the destruction of George Wallace's presidential ambitions.
In the primary, yes. Georgia, not unexpectedly, went to Carter, his home state. Missouri was a surprise, or at least it was something that was could have been a toss-up before the actual vote came in. Wisconsin, which was one of the last two states, one of the states that put him over the top with its 11 electoral votes, he would have had it earlier and more surely, except for Eugene McCarthy, who took about 2% of the votes in Wisconsin.
Wisconsin vote surprises me a little, Harry, because he almost lost to Udall in the primary there. A third of the state is Catholic and worries about him. And the Democrats have carried a presidential election only once in the last quarter century in Wisconsin.
Well, he did very well in the cities, and he barely took the Catholic vote, according to our early analysis. Louisiana, he won, but keeping the South solid for him. Maryland.
Yes, Maryland, he won almost in spite of the machine. The machine didn't like him. They were for Pat Brown, and indeed gave Pat Brown his, Jerry Brown, and gave Jerry Brown his biggest success.
Minnesota, there was not much doubt of. His vice presidential candidate comes from there. Hubert Humphrey comes from there. It's Democratic territory in presidential elections. Tennessee. Tennessee was an important border state for him to take, and he took it convincingly.
And carried along a senator named Sasser, whom no one had ever heard of in Tennessee 5 months before. But Carter had his 52nd birthday in Tennessee with Sasser and put Sasser on the map.
Alabama, where George Wallace gave him his support, went for Carter with 9 votes. Kentucky, another border state. South Carolina, which again had been considered leaning to him all the time, but which was important for the solid South. Mississippi, which took a long time.
Mississippi took a very long time. It was quite late in the evening that Mississippi came through for Carter, and there it was a question of the southerner in Mississippi being the winning reason, because Mississippi has been in the past a Republican state, but they couldn't resist having a southerner there, and so Mississippi, with its 7 votes, went to Carter.
Arkansas, strongly Democratic, no particular problem there, no particular suspense. West Virginia, there wasn't any particular doubt that that would go Democratic and go for Carter. Hawaii, by ABC's count, was the state that put him over the top.
That's right, but there really wasn't very much doubt there. Hawaii has been traditionally Democratic, but they do have, at least by ABC, the distinction of making the next president the winner.
Rhode Island and Delaware were both toss-up states. They could have gone either way, but they went for Carter.
And Washington, D.C. is just overwhelmingly Democratic for anybody, Carter or anyone else.
So that's the vote, 272, 2 more than necessary to put him over the top. 272 to so far Ford's 186.
And not that it matters at this point, but we still haven't heard from California, and we still haven't heard from Maine, at least on my lineup. We'll come back and we'll try to give you some profiles of Carter and the people around him and what might happen to some of the Ford people, where they might go after January when they're no longer in office. More continuous election coverage after this. It is Jimmy Carter, 52-year-old Jimmy Carter, whom ABC projects as the next president of the United States, father of 3 sons and 1 daughter. We're going to see a lot of that now. 9-year-old Amy, she was 8 years old when we first began to pay very close attention to her. By 272 electoral votes, 2 more than he needed, Jimmy Carter projected as the next president of the United States. Well, Jim Kincaid has been lounging around in Plains, Georgia, having a very quiet, soft time, but I'll bet it isn't quiet and soft there right now. Jim, you're not lounging at this moment, are you?
Not at all. Miss Lillian, I suppose I don't have to ask you how you feel. You're going to tell me, aren't you?
Oh, yeah, I feel wonderful. I've been through so many wins and losses tonight, I'm just sick. I'm just so glad he had last his run. Everybody here is so happy, because I'm the happiest mother in the world right now.
You've been up a long time, Miss Lillian. What do you plan to do the rest of the evening?
Go to bed, I hope. I don't know, I'm going to stay here till Jimmy comes.
Miss Lillian?
Miss Lillian, Barbara would like to ask you a question.
Yes, I'd like to ask
I don't hear a thing.
Miss Lillian, can you hear
I
me?
can't hear a thing.
She can't hear me. Jim,
Barbara,
can you
Miss
hear me?
Lillian is unable to hear you.
Jim, suppose I give you the question.
Okay, fine. I'll relay it.
All right. Would you ask Miss Lillian if at this point she has talked either to her son or daughter-in-law? Has she had any communication with them?
Have you talked to either Jimmy or Rosalind?
No, my sister called me about 2 hours ago and told me that Jimmy told her to call me. But said he'd be late getting home, but he said wait for him.
Do you expect to be here when he gets back?
Yes, I do.
You're going to stay down here?
Oh, yeah. If anybody does, I will. I haven't heard a thing. Yeah, me baby.
Can't hear a thing? Well, the nation is hearing you, Miss Lillian.
Right. That's all. That's all that matters.
Perhaps we'd like to hear about your plans once your son has moved into the White House.
I love you too. I think. Well, when I'm going to stay in planes. The rest of my life, I hope. I'm tired of traveling, and I hope I never have to help anybody else in a political race. And I won't unless it's Jimmy.
Thank you, Miss Lillian, very much. Barbara?
Thank you, Jim Kincaid. That's Miss Lillian, the 78-year-old mother of Jimmy Carter. Rosalind Carter's mother is also living. She's 70 years old. Miss Lillian has said that she's going to help her son take care of the problems of the elderly. Well, we're going to have more coming up next, a good deal more of our continuous election coverage right after this. We are back with our election coverage. ABC has projected Jimmy Carter the winner with 272 electoral votes. Jimmy Carter has already said some of the things that he will do with his first 100 days. You see the electoral votes there, Carter 272 and Ford 186. California still has not come in with its 45 votes, but it won't make a difference now. Anyway, as I started to say, Jimmy Carter has said some of the things he will do those first 100 days in office, and these are some that he promises to do: to have a blanket pardon to draft dodgers of the Vietnam War, and also to set up review boards to decide the cases of the war-era deserters and perhaps pardon those who went AWOL. He's going to ask Congress for authority to reorganize the executive branch, to cut 1,900 federal agencies down to about 200, and he's going to launch a year-long study of the federal tax system to simplify it and eliminate loopholes. Those are some of the things he said he'd do those first 100 days.
And in July, whatever the day was, at Madison Square Garden, when Sam Donaldson talked to him as after he finished his acceptance speech, asked him how long it would take to do all these things, he said, oh, he'd have them all done by the end of his first term. He's modified that some. Presidents tend to modify what they would think they're going to do.
You remember when there was a great debate as to whom Jimmy Carter would choose as his vice presidential candidate, and when Mondale's name was announced, Ms. Lillian turned around to Sam Donaldson and said, "Thank God it wasn't you, Sam."
I don't know. She probably didn't mean it. She was teasing Sam.
Well, she wanted us to keep a good reporter.
Of course, Rosalind Carter has said that she's also going to have her projects. What she cares most about, she has said, is mental health. That's something that she wants to work a good deal in. Joan Mondale cares particularly about the arts, and she wants to encourage the arts in this country and perhaps implement what she calls a civil rights bill for artists. So the women who have played an important part in the primaries hope to play an important part when they actually get to president and vice presidential wife positions.
I suppose one area where it won't make much difference is in foreign policy. There will be obviously a new Secretary of State. Secretary Kissinger won't have to decide now whether he wants to stay on for 2 more years. But in actual policy, it won't make that much difference.
In foreign policy, no. I shouldn't. I think in domestic policy it will. I think Democrats are different from Republicans. I think that they will. They do believe in more government action, and Republicans believe in less. And I think that Jimmy Carter's indicated that with several specific proposals, some of which Barbara mentioned, while Ford has vetoed many, many actions that Carter would have taken.
2 possible conjectures for Secretary of State: Zib Brzezinski, who's a professor at Columbia, and Cyrus Vance, who is a lawyer, but Jimmy Carter has been his own man about this, and nobody knows yet who he's not in any sense given any direction as to who it might be. That's the National Election Night Story at 52 minutes after the hour.